I'm excited to chat with you. So thanks
Wonderful,
for.
wonderful. Hey, no problem. Thanks for coming on. I was just getting started to talk about kids in sports and how much is too much. And Joe was giving my perspective on youth sports, and from being a dad who has a daughter that was engaging in CYO basketball, and then also with Tyro basketball and AAU training. And it was very, very intense, very aggressive, the training. And because everyone has that pie in the sky, idea of, hey, my child is going to be the next, and insert the name. So, but I wanted to get your perspective, because this is a pretty critical topic on kids in sports. How much is too much? What are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you're right. We're pretty heavily involved in the kids sports space, particularly with the project that we're doing out here. So we deal with a lot of coaches, parents, and I think that absolutely in today's world there's a lot more pressure on kids, and I think it's translated to sports. And I think there's a lot of different reasons why that might be happening, but I think it correlates, the explosion of technology, which is great for a lot of things in society. But I also think that it also can be a drawback because there's just way more information, so that it creates a much more competitive environment than when you had, say, when I was a kid. I'm 43, right? So you didn't have access to so much information.
Right.
So I'll give you an example. Like, for instance, here in the Northeast, hockey is really big, right? So you'll have like mite hockey teams that have, all their stats online, and these kids are 7 or 8 years old, right? And parents are keeping track of goals and everything. And I think there's just a lot of information overload, and I think it leads to, a lot of, just a lot of interaction that you wouldn't have seen previously. When you had more alone time with your kids as a family. If you went back to your house, there wasn't the internet, there wasn't the ability to, be on social media 24/7. So, I think you had a little bit more downtime than you do today. And I think it's translated into sports. I also think that the other thing that's driving it is, there's a lot of competition, and college has become extremely expensive.
Yes.
And I don't think wages has kept up with it. I don't think people's income has kept up with the cost of college, and that's evidenced by the massive student loan debt that you see in the United States, right?
Correct.
So I think parents view it as a way to get their children an education. So you see a lot of people pushing their kids towards sports to get, not necessarily become pro athletes, but it's still, believe me, there's a lot of parents that have the the illusions of grandeur that kids are going to become professional too. And I think everyone knows the real stats behind it, that it's less than 1% of 1% of 1% are ever going to make it to that level. But I think a lot of it has to do with college. So I think if they can get supplemental income for their kids, they view it as an investment in their kids. So it's definitely a strange time in the when you watch youth sports. But I think there's, on the flip side, so those are the negatives that are driving it. I'll give you one positive that I think is driving the expansion of youth sports. As long as you don't couple it with the crazy parents behind it, I think it's a good thing. And I think that is the fact, again, go back to technology and child obesity, child diabetes, which is a huge problem in the United States. I think that parents are very, very worried about their kids being on, the iPad all the time. And not that it's a bad thing, but, the video games, things like that, the more sedentary type of lifestyle that kids are leading today, because it's easier to communicate via, the internet. Look, I watch my kids in there. I worry about them being on the iPad at night, right? Even though it's the way they communicate with their friends now. They can be on things. And so I think they view sports as, hey, if I can get them involved in sports, at least they're out there being active. And that is a good aspect of this.
Joe, I just wanted to jump in because you had some key points here. I guess I'll work my way in. The key part is the camaraderie, number one, the physical interaction, number two, actually physically seeing a person versus staring at a screen. You'll take that over any day. The inability for parents to manage screen time for their kids. It's out of control. It's out of control
Right.
because I can tell you one, I've been in IT for 20 years, and it has to be really in depth to say, okay, I'm going to turn off the internet for these devices at this time. I mean, the average dad or mom is not going to know how to do this type of stuff. So it's unsupervised internet usage is another piece. The other thing I was going to bring up, which you made a good point, is are these youth athletes taught from a young age to be aggressive at all costs? Now, aggressive to the point of, hey, it's like you said, do you have the overbearing parent that says, hey, I want you to get this scholarship, this is going to subsidize the loan, it's going to limit the amount of funds that we are going to have to kick out to include, so that you can succeed and achieve your degree. But also, like you said, the delusions of grandeur. I mean, I look at some of these parents and, the way they're pushing and screaming at the kids, and I'm just like, okay, let's take a deep breath because this is just a game.
Yeah, no, I think it's strange, right? You can't put your hand on it, but I would have to say, I try to think back to when I grew up again. It was just a different place, right? You didn't have, maybe parents didn't have the time. I sometimes wonder what it is, but I do agree, it's way too competitive, way too early. I just went to, a Hall of Fame induction thing for the Massa Hockey Hall of Fame for a couple of friends of mine. And one of the coaches was the coach of BU, the legendary guy, Jack Parker. And a friend of mine named Dave Jensen, who played on the Olympic team and played in the pros, and he was inducted. But they talked about the number one thing about the state of hockey in Massachusetts and other sports, and they all universally said it's way too serious and kids need to be having fun. And I don't, you could debate why it's driving it, but it's definitely not healthy for the children. They definitely need sports. Like part of the reason, with the project that we do here and what we're doing at the New England Sports Village and up here is to try to bring sports back to what it should be, which is that platform that prepares kids for life, right? Exactly what you said. Camaraderie, you're a part of a team, sacrifice, working within a group, all those things that are really good skill sets that come from sports. But I think it's almost this compete over everything and access to too much information where the parents have just gotten away from them, right? And you can't be pushing kids to compete and be focused on winning at the cost of being a good sport, at the cost of, having respect for your opponents. But that also happens, that's also like what you mentioned. I think it's also a reflection of technology, right? Where there's not as much accountability, where, you have a lot of social bullying, things like that, where it's different.
Yes.
Where, so and I'm not here to, I don't want to be negative about technology. There's incredible things that technology has done for society, and it's unbelievable how far we've come. But there definitely is a social negative to the kids aren't meant to have so much information all the time. And I think sports, it's translated into the competitive nature of sports at young ages. So, we just have to try to get it. Doesn't mean sports are bad. It means sports, the purity of them are amazing and they're needed more than ever. But I think it needs to be balanced with, what are these kids there to play sports and why? And it's really to build skills for life, because most of them aren't going to go anywhere higher. Majority of them won't even play in college, right? So
it's true.
But I think there's a lot of positive aspects, a lot of things that we could change. And I think it's an interesting time that we're in.
Joe, I want to thank you. Well, before I thank you, I definitely want to get you back here whenever you're available. I'll work through the PR firm, but I want to get back there with you because there's some core values that you've mentioned tonight that really I want to touch upon once again, because it is about parents realizing, like I said, you can live vicariously through your son or daughter and thinking they're going to be the next pro athlete, or you can have, that reality check. But I would definitely wanted you to come back. Also, before you go, I want you to plug New England Sports Village. What's the best way to learn more about it? Find it online, listen to it via social media, all the above.
Yeah, the best place to go is just go to the website. It's sportsvillage.com, and you can see a lot of really great information. You know, it's definitely a project that is right in line with what you and I are talking about, which is, you know, trying to create an atmosphere where sports is extremely positive for the family and you know, dynamic in the interaction between the parent and the child. That's the basis of the whole thing. And I think with the stuff that you're doing, you know, on your show is incredibly important. So yeah, I'd love to come back anytime and, you know, keep up the good work.
Joe, thanks so much. Want to give you a round of applause.